Good afternoon, everyone. As Alex mentioned, my name's Craig. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today, just to speak about a little small topic called AI, which I'm sure you guys have heard of, and it's certainly something that doesn't seem to be going away as much as some of us might want it to. But this is a follow-up session from, well, I wouldn't say follow-up, but it's a lead-up from the last session we had last year, where we had a good conversation around agents and what agents we utilize within our businesses. And how we can extend data sources. So one of the biggest things around these agents is the data that we feed it. So from a extensions perspective, so how can we get different types of data from different sources into these agents is very topical at the moment. And we've traditionally really added it to specific environments. So if we use, for example, Microsoft Copilot, we would add that within the Microsoft ecosystem. Fantastic, it's pretty easy to do, but how do we actually extend that out? How do we get other data into these agents so we can actually have these agents be a little bit more agnostic around where these data sources come from? So in the last probably 12 months or so, there was a little thing called Model Context Protocol, or MCP, that was designed to try and fix the problem that we have with this extensions around data. So just a little bit of an agenda, what we'll cover today. So basically, I'll just touch on those different agent types again that we spoke about last year for those of you that weren't here. And then I'm really just gonna touch on an overview of MCP. So I'm really gonna try and just give you a good understanding of what it is, how do we use it, when do we use it, and when do we not use it, and when do we use something like a connector. So I'm really going to try and give you that comparison view and show you exactly which one's going to work best for your organization. What this isn't is, it's not a replacement of a current connector that you may have. If you're not using connectors, I'm going to take you through that as well, so you'll have an understanding of that. But MCP is certainly not a replacement. It's going to be something that is an option within your toolbox that you can utilize to extend that data out. I'm then going to give a very simple business use case from utilizing Exchange Online or using Outlook. And we're basically just going to build this agent to be able to send emails on our behalf, to check our calendars, to build a statement of work and email it to people, all without me having to type the email or open my email at all. So that'll be the use case that we're going to build out together. I'll build it out both with the connectors, and then I'll build it up with the MCP side, and you can just see the differences for that. Once the demo's over, basically take you through a little bit of guidance around governance and risks. So just straight up front with regards to MCP, when we start choosing to go down that road and we build them ourselves, then the entire solution from security and governance, as well as version control, all become our responsibility. So that it is something to consider when we're building these out, but I'll take you through all of those different options available to us. I'll then just give you some practical steps or takeaways, and then I'll hand over to my colleague Liam, who will take you guys through just some of the licensing changes and things that are coming within Microsoft in 2026. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it off with this slide. So basically, within the Microsoft ecosystem, we have three types of agents or co-pilots that we build out. The first one is those embedded ones. So probably a lot of you might have it, Microsoft 365 Copilot or Copilot for Microsoft 365. This is the Copilot that sits within your Word, Excel, PowerPoint. You see it within your ribbon, and it can generate documentation for you. That is licensed on a one-to-one basis, so it's licensed on a per user perspective. And these are generally utilized for that individual itself. It's not designed to be built out for the entire company. It is something that you will use as an individual and as a personal assistant to yourself from an AI perspective. Where we want to build out an agent for the entire organization to utilize, that's where we lean towards the middle one, a custom agent. And this is where we can utilize something like Copilot Studio to build that out. Now, that is not licensed on a per user basis, that is licensed on a per tenant basis. So your business will buy one license, that license will have a capacity plan in it, and then that capacity plan will be your prompts, and basically you utilize those tokens within your organization. The nice thing about these custom agents is that you will be able to let every user within your organization use them rather than having to license each individual user individually. The third one is the specialized agents. So these are agents that we might build in like Azure, so something like Microsoft Foundry, where we're building the agents from the ground up. This is really where we got full control from the ground up. We don't use any low code. We basically build this out from scratch. And these are really for specialized use cases where we can't utilize either or of the first two. So today, the one that we're going to focus on the most is those custom agents. So those custom agents are going to be the one that we're going to look at. So we'll be working in Copilot Studio, and we'll just be taking you through exactly how we build those out. So from an extension perspective, this is really the 4 ways that we can extend the data. So when we're looking at a custom agent that we build out, we generally lean towards the connectors. So you'll see now in my demo, we'll have a list of 1,500 plus connectors that are all there available for you. So things like Dropbox, things like Monday.com, things like the Microsoft ones. There's a whole bunch of connectors that Copilot Studio has built into it. If you're familiar with Power Automate, it's exactly the same connectors that we use in Power Automate that are available within the Copilot Studio environment. And we utilize these connectors to build these workflows, to build these automations, and also to be able to access the data points that we want. So that's probably one of the main ways that we're extending it right now. We can also build custom integrations, so through the plugins. We can also do direct APIs. So if a customer or a vendor has direct APIs, we can leverage those. And now, of course, there in the bottom right, we have the MCP aspect as well. So the two that I'm going to focus on today, MCP and connectors, and just a direct comparison between the two. A connector is going to be governed. So in other words, we can be quite granular with what we wanted to access, whereas the MCP part is going to be very similar to a prompt that you would put into Copilot or ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude or whichever AI tool that you guys are utilizing. It's very similar to that. It's the autonomous piece. It makes a decision and brings back information for you. So connectors and MCP, very different. One is very dynamic, where the other one is pretty structured and very strict with what it goes and fetches for us. So with all of that, what is this MCP or Model Context Protocol? So I've been thinking about a bit of analogies around how do I actually deliver this that's going to make a little bit more sense. And the one thing that came to my mind is if we think about this laptop over here, I've got one USB port. I go and buy a USB dock. That USB dock sits on my desk. It's got 5 USB ports on it. I plug in my mouse, my thumb drive, and my external hard drive into that, and my laptop then reads all of those peripherals, even though I've only got a single USB port. This is pretty much exactly what an MCP server will do. So basically what will happen, we'll have multiple agents that we build out. So let's say we've got 3, 4, 5 agents that we've built out for our organization. One might be for HR, one might be for finance, one might be a general one. We can actually have an MCP, which is that docking station piece sitting in the middle, and all of these agents can then talk to the different data sources through that central MCP server. And you'll see that in the demo, how much it does assist with speeding up the time for you to be able to access that data out. So at the bottom there, you'll see it says solves the M times N problem. M meaning the amount of agents we build, and N meaning the amount of connectors that are part of that agent. So if we build one agent today, and we build out the solution and it's got 10 connectors, great. Then we've got one agent and 10 connectors to manage. Then we add another agent with another 10 connectors. Suddenly we've got 2 agents and 20 connectors. And each of these connectors have got their own way of connecting to the data. So suddenly we've got a whole bunch of connectors that we need to manage. We need to manage the authentication piece of it. And if it breaks, we've got to go and fix it in all of those agents as well. So it really can become quite a bit of a spaghetti bowl to manage around what is accessing where, which connectors are using, etc. It's not a bad solution. It's not a replacement. MCP is not trying to replace this, but there are ways that we can, if we don't need to be strict with those connectors, we'd rather utilize something like MCP. So MCP within the Microsoft Agents context. So within Copilot Studio, we're going to have built-in MCP clients, so we don't have to actually build that out. So we'll create the agent. That agent serves as the MCP client. And it gets a little bit more, I suppose, easy if we look at the MCP that is being delivered as software as a service. So what that means that within Copilot Studio, we now have the ability to add MCP servers delivered to you as a SaaS product. What that means is that you don't have to manage the underlying code. You don't have to manage the uptime of that MCP server anymore. That is delivered to you as a service. You utilize it, and all you control is the access that that MCP server has to your data. And what I mean by that is just because we add a MCP server for email, maybe we don't want it to be able to delete emails. Maybe we don't want it to be able to compose emails. And we can control that with switches, just turning them on and off to make the level of security and follow that least privilege approach as much as we can. So the MCP server can be delivered as a SaaS product, or you can host it yourself within VMs, containers, Docker containers, wherever you want to host it. It's really up to you. So this is just a conceptual comparison between the two. The connectors themselves are very predefined, pretty rigid with regards to what they can do. They're really good when we have repeatable workflows or automation that we want to achieve. So if we want a specific task to run on triggered by a schedule or by someone saying something, they're really good with that because they just follow the same road every single day in and out. They're not going to go and turn left at the street and try and go around the block. They're basically going to go exactly the same way and back. So they're very predictable when we're using the connectors. They are managed they're managed service. So security is built in via Microsoft, via these connectors that are made available to you. When we move to the MCP side, it becomes more dynamic. So when we ask that same question, it can go via the roundabouts, it can go via another street, and then bring back the solution to you. What that does give us, it gives us the flexibility to add a whole bunch of data, let these agents reason over that data. And what that means is basically go and have a look at it, make sure that you're giving me the right answer and bring it back. And that is one of the biggest differences between MCP and the connectors, is that the connectors cannot use what is known as a semantic index, and the MCP can. And what that really is, in plain English, is the MCP side is allowed to understand what that data is. It knows that there's a dog, the dog is brown, the dog is a large dog or a small dog, and it maps all that into an index to be able to give you some rich intel on your data. Whereas a connector is going to go out, get the data, bring it back, and that's it. It's never going to try and understand that data whatsoever. So that's a really, really important part around if you are looking for that indexing, that richness of understanding your data, then MCP is going to be your friend for when you're connecting it up. This is a bit of a decision tree, and I was umming and ahhing if I'm going to show this because I don't 100% agree with the first part, but this is Microsoft's approach. And basically what it says there, if there's a first-party connector available, yes, then use it. I sort of disagree because I think there's a lot more to the decision than that. So if you disagree with me, then maybe you can follow it. But what I would do is I'll take that first decision part around being a connector available and just maybe put it aside and follow the rest and see what you can do from a decision perspective. But basically, this is how we decide on what we want to utilize. So scheduled repeatable workflows, absolutely. If we're just trying to automate a process, we actually don't need an agent to do that. We need a flow to do that. And we can basically use something like Power Automate to do that, no problem. We actually don't need Copilot or any agents to do that. If governance and audits is a top priority and you want that wrapped as a service, then again, those connectors come out of the box with guaranteed uptimes, guaranteed security built into them. They're really good. But as soon as we need context-aware decisions, we need that flexibility, that fluidity around making the decision or trying to find different information for me, where that richness comes in, like when you guys ask ChatGPT a question or you upload a document, that is all utilizing that same context-aware stuff. That is where a MCP is going to be a lot stronger for your agent when building it out. So this is the demo that we're going to do. So basically what happens is we're going to just build one that's going to be using connectors, and it's going to be able to send an email. It's going to be able to build out a statement of work. It's going to be able to schedule people. And like I said, I'm not going to open my Outlook once with this. The agent's going to do it for me. And we're going to do it in two ways. We're going to do it with the connector, and we're going to do it with the MCP side. So like I said, anything that is just about automation, just about a flow, we really do not need agents to do that. So just keep that in mind when you're sitting in your rooms or your war rooms and you say, cool, well, what are we going to use AI for? And a topic comes up. Okay, well, what about if an email comes into this mailbox and we pull that attachment out and we get the data exported into an Excel and emailed off to a certain mailbox? That's automation. We don't need an AI agent to do that. We can just use an automation flow to get that going. So that's one of the big things we're seeing in the discussions we're having is a lot of the time we have the discussions and it turns out it's more about automation than AI. And so we don't need the large language models. So there's a little bit of I suppose, a gray area around that. But anything that's got to do with fetching, receiving, and trying to automate and doing exactly the same task day in and day out, lean towards the automation piece rather than leaning towards the agentic AI piece. Anything where we want to overlay an orchestrator, so in other words, a little chat window where your users can say, what's my policy for leave? Where can I put in leave? Or please put a piece of leave in for me, check my leave balances. Absolutely, that's where we put an agent in front of them. They can go and get all that data through the MCP server, come back, and your leave is approved, etc. So those are the use cases that we want to try and differentiate between. So in the demo I'm going to do, you're going to see that AI can decide when to send the email. So it can do that. With a connector, it will have to be specified for it. Like I mentioned, that semantic search piece, it is only available if we're connecting via MCP. Connectors is not going to do that. Drafting personalized emails, that again is going to depend on what we've configured from a connector perspective, but we can generally only utilize templates with that. And any multi-step workflow. So if I put in one single prompt and I say, hey, Mr. Agent, can you please email Craig at this email address, ask him to please send the statement of work to John, and then also double check my calendar for tomorrow if I've got time at 10 a.m. to 11. If I do, please schedule him for a meeting so we can review the statement of work, and then please make the tone professional. I type that in and off it goes. Or I speak to the agent and off it goes. I never ever have to open my email. It'll go and do all that work for you. And hopefully, if the demo guards are with me today, we'll be able to get that right. And you'll be able to see exactly how we build this out. So before I jump in the demo, any questions? Anyone have any questions that they need answered before we jump in? Or jump in and hopefully see something pretty cool if it works. If there are any questions, please shout. So this is Copilot Studio. For those of you that have never ever seen it, this is the one that we license on a per tenant basis. So you pay either on a pay-as-you-go basis or you can pay on a pre-bundled license. It's not super expensive. I think it's really good value for money. And you can basically come and build these agents and publish them to your users to utilize. Where can you publish them? You can publish them pretty much anywhere. So there are multiple channels available for you to publish them. If you wanted to put this on your website, you could. If you wanted to put it in Teams channels, you could. If you wanted to put this in WhatsApp, in Telegram. In fact, we've built a couple for other customers where we've put it into WhatsApp and we've put it into the Telegrams of the world because we people are on their mobile devices and they want to be able to interact with them. So we really can publish these agents that we build in Copilot Studio pretty much anywhere, which is fantastic for scaling and for putting these agents in front of the users with devices or with platforms that they utilize on a day-to-day basis. So this is the agent. I'm just going to create from a blank canvas. I'm going to say MCP Connect. And basically what we do, I'm not going to tell it anything else. I'm not going to give it instructions. I'm not going to do anything funky. I'm basically going to add tools. So you can see over here, we've got connectors, we've got flows. There's the API piece that I spoke about, and we've got model context protocol over here. For this one, though, we're going to do the connector part. All right, so I'm going to add a, so before I do that, let's do this. I'm going to say to it, send an email to, I'll just send it to my Gmail and ask Craig to please review the statement of work. Now, because we haven't added any tools to this agent's not going to be able to do that because it doesn't have any ability to connect. All right. So what we can do is we can come into the tools part. I'm going to go add. I'm going to click on Office 365. And then you're going to see over here, we're going to see a bunch of sends. So here's send email v2. So I will just add that one. Cool. So now that that tool's added, now I can actually ask it again. It should come up and ask me to connect. Allow that. And now because we've added the ability for this, let me just do it again quickly. There we go. So now it's sent an email to myself, and that email will come through in a second over there. And what happens is, because we've added the ability to send emails through a connector, that agent is now allowed to do things on our behalf. The problem with it, or not the problem with it, because these connectors are so strict and very granular with what permissions we're giving them, that's all it can do right now. If I asked this to check my calendar and schedule another person, it wouldn't be able to do that. If I asked it to go and list my first email within my inbox or the last 5 emails I've received and tell me what they are, say I'm driving, do I have any unread emails, it won't be able to connect that because we haven't given it the permission to do so. So what we would have to do is we would have to, so there's the email that's come through. So what we would have to do is we'd have to come in and give it those permissions to do that. So what we would do is we'd add another connector for us to be able to, and we start stacking these connectors for all of the abilities or the actions that we want these agents to be able to do for us. So if I go, let's go, let's do get emails. So get emails is going to allow it to go and view my emails and list my latest emails. So we can add that. And this is where you start seeing that MXN that I spoke about, where we're creating an agent, but we've got a bunch of connectors that we've got to start managing. Now, each of these connectors are being added with an authentication connection over here. So let's say, for example, we're using a service account or a general account. If that account gets deleted, then all of these are going to break. So we really got to manage these connectors on quite a granular level because we're going to add multiple to there. So I've added that now. If I say check my last email received, it'll ask me to connect again. This is only in the test window. So once we publish it won't ask for permissions at all. It's just in the test window itself that's doing that. So there we go. I've got an email from Superbase, which is a database application that I use. And basically, it's given me what my last email is. So if we think about this use case could be, guys, we're going to build an agent out that everyone in the organization can use. We're going to enable voice. So we're going to enable that you can talk to this agent. So you're sitting in the car, you call out your agent and you say, hey, do I have any unread emails? It'll speak to you and tell you how many unread emails you have. You say, okay, please reply to Liam and let Liam know that I'm on my way. I'm going to be 15 minutes late. It'll send the email on my behalf. And that's the idea around creating this agent. So what we can do now is we can say, okay, fine, what if I wanted you to schedule Liam or schedule myself with a calendar? Again, we're going to have to come into the tools and we're going to have to add a specific connector again. And this is where we start stacking these connectors so big that it really does become a bit of a problem when we start managing them. But again, I'm going to repeat it. It's not a bad way to do it. It certainly isn't. And MCP is not a replacement, but it is something to just be aware of that you might have to start managing all of these quite closely. There is no limit, really. You can just keep adding them as much as you like. Yeah. Yeah, no problem whatsoever. Yeah. You're just going to have to just keep adding the ones that you wanted to do. Exactly that. And this is where MCP is going to come into play. So here I can go, okay, cool, get calendars. And when I add get calendars, it's basically going to say to me, all right, now I can go look at your calendar. Do I have available space or available time tomorrow between 10 and 11? And because it's got the permission, now it's going to be able to do that. So it works. There's nothing wrong with it. It certainly works. But now let's do it on the MCP side. And I mentioned that we've got MCPs now that are becoming more and more popular and available via the SaaS product, which makes our lives so much easier because we don't have to host these custom-built MCP servers. I have got one running, and I'll show you the difference. But basically, what we can do now is we can say, okay, fine, I've built out this agent, but now suddenly I've got so many different connectors connecting everywhere. It's hard to manage. The security team is on my case because we're connecting into SQL, and we can only go and look at one row and whatever may be what the answers are or the problems are. So what we can do now, I'm going to build a new agent. So I'm just going to, again, create from a blank agent. But instead of using the connectors this time, we're going to use the built-in MCP servers that we have available to us. So just wait for that to build. And you notice I'm not giving it any fancy instructions. I'm not telling it that you are this. That really does help because it helps give the guardrails around the agent and what the agent is there to do. So you spend your time and you fill in all of these instructions that are here. You really are going to create a very rich experience for your users. But just for the sake of time, I'm not doing any of that today. So basically, I'm going to just call this one MCP agent. Save that. And this time, we're going to go to the tools. We're going to add a tool. But we're going to go to the model context protocol here. All right. So you can see there's a whole bunch of MCPs that are available to us. And this list is growing on a monthly basis. So there's Zapier ones there. There's Monday.com already. A lot of Microsoft stuff, obviously, and the ones that I've built customly. But basically, you're getting a bunch of MCP servers, again, delivered to you as a SaaS product. You don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure, which is pretty cool. So let's go have a look over here. I will say, all right, I'm going to add the Microsoft Outlook Mail MCP. I'm going to add and configure that. And just like that, this agent's going to have access to my entire mailbox. So it's going to be able to write emails. It's going to be able to tell me what emails I have available to me, respond to emails, etc., just through that MCP server. But just because we've added that, it doesn't mean that we have to let it do all of that. You'll see every MCP server is going to publish you specific actions that it's allowed to do. Now, by default, they're all on, but we can certainly come in here and say, well, I don't want you to be able to add attachments or draft attachments. I don't want you to be able to delete messages or reply to all. Perhaps someone's driving and a corporate email goes out and then someone says, oh, I'm going to reply to that and to my mates and say something, and it just goes to everyone in the company. So you might not want to have the ability to allow these MCPs to do that. So we can certainly come in and we can toggle these on and off to suit what our requirement is.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Is this configuration still agent-based, or that can be predefined and we distribute to different agents?
So all of this is predefined through the SaaS product.
Yeah.
If you build your own custom MCP, then you can define what they do.
If I want to turn off 5 of the ability from the MCP for this agent, can I apply the same setting for different agent very easily?
Absolutely.
Or I have to turn on them individually for different agents?
So a different agent, you can just add the MCP. It'll be a different container.
To toggle the settings
Correct.
individually.
Correct. Yeah. So every time we add an MCP to an agent or separate agent, it's a separate version or separate container of that hosted version. So you'd have to toggle that, yeah. So basically, we can control all of the tools that are available. For this, I'm just going to add it as is. And basically, now we have the ability to do all of that that is on there. So I can ask it to send an email to test. Just allow it, and off it'll go. So you might have noticed that when we add these MCPs, there are sometimes, I suppose, a little bit of granularity that we have. So there's a dedicated MCP for mail for Microsoft. There's a dedicated MCP for calendar events. So you can certainly structure it that way. So what I'll do now is I will add a MCP for the calendaring. So I'll just come down here quickly. Where is it? There we go. So add the calendar. And then I'm also going to want this agent to be able to write documentation on the fly. So while I'm driving down to Dunedin from Christchurch, please create me a template for a statement of work and also send that to Craig on my behalf. So what I'll do now is just add the ability for us to do it from a Word perspective. So just search for the Microsoft ones, filter that by model context, and then add the Word MCP. So you may notice we don't have MCPs for Excel or PowerPoint or anything like that yet. The only ones that are available really is Exchange as well as Word. And basically now I have added those 3 tools, 3 MCP servers. And again, we can open up the available tools. Do we want them allowed to create documents? Do we want it to go and fetch documents or find documents, add comments, that type of stuff with regards to it? With the add comments and the reply to comments, again, we can get these agents to read the document while we're driving. So it's almost like listening to a podcast, but it might be a little bit more boring. But you can also add comments, say, okay, pause there, add a comment there, and it will go and add a comment to that document while you're driving without you having to actually open up the document itself. And with that, instead of watching me type, I've actually typed this out already. So give me a sec. So what I'm going to do is I am going to ask it to send an email, tell him I've arrived safe. Please ask him to email John regarding the statement of work, attach a statement of work template we just created. Before sending the email, please schedule a one-off meeting for the statement of work. So we haven't created a template yet, but let's see what it does anyway. It should tell me. Let me just allow these. And because we're using MCP, it's going to try and figure out how it's going to do this, okay? So it's going to go through all the different tools that it has and try and figure out what is the best way for me to get this done on my behalf. And that is what that whole semantic index really comes in, and that's where the dynamicness comes in. You saw how rigid and strict we are with connectors, whereas we've added 3 MCPs here, and we're able to do a whole bunch of things simultaneously.
So
Obviously, a lot of power with the MCP,
Yeah.
Especially being able to act on your path and things like that. What sort of protections do you guys have in place from like prompt injection and stuff like that?
So basically, everything from this side of things is all managed by Microsoft, but if you're using a custom MCP, that all becomes part of your CISO and part of your portfolio that you guys would have to manage. So from here, Microsoft uses Defender for Cloud to manage all of these. So that's going to be utilizing all of the Plan 2 stuff that's sitting in the background, but we don't control any of it. But on the custom side, it will have to be performed part and parcel of what you do. All of these are using OAuth 2, so they're all integrated into Entra, all right? So that is what your authentication method is. But if you used a custom one, then you would have to decide what your authentication method's going to be, how you're going to review your security risks, logging, all that type of stuff with that. So that is something to consider if you go custom. Okay. So, sure.
Just, that's a very good topic. I mean, as an MCP provider, we can do security control by all the things in our system. But one thing we cannot do is actually the auditing of when the actual MCP server get called. So when we get into the financial data, and sometimes the MCP make a decision that we call this doing some unreversible actions. Is Microsoft have a solution out of the box auditing to prove the paper trail when customers start to auditing us?
So all of these that are built as a SaaS product all plug into Purview. I don't know if you've used like, so basically Microsoft Purview is its governance, and there's a thing called centralized logging there, and basically all of these logs for these SaaS products are going to be pushed into there. Having said that, even if we use the custom ones, there is the ability for us to inject the logs into Purview as well. But then we would basically, depending on where we're hosting that custom MCP server, we could log those into Purview as well. So Purview will be your best friend there with regards to the centralized logging, being able to trigger things. If you've got running Sentinel, you can push those logs into Sentinel, run playbooks, all that type of stuff with regards to that. So what we've seen in the past, or when we've built some of these out like that, if a specific incident happens, then we basically turn off that MCP server straight away type of thing. Fix it, but it's all done through Sentinel as well as Purview within the Microsoft ecosystem. Yeah, no worries. So you can see we added those 3 MCPs, and it sent an email. Let's see if it actually did. There it is there. There's the statement of work. I'm not expecting this to be any good because I didn't really give it a very nice prompt, but there it created a little statement of work. Didn't do a great job with the table, but it built out a statement of work for me and sent it off to my email address. And it says, hi, I want to let you know that I've arrived safe. Could you please email John regarding the statement of work? I've attached the statement of work template for your reference. Thanks, Craig. And that is all done without opening Word, without opening emails. It just does it on your behalf, all through that MCP piece. Absolutely. So you can set this to use specific templates. So it'll use your template. This one just created its own. I didn't have one. And that'll bring me to the next topic where I'll show you the custom ones where it'll use a template. But yeah, you can absolutely get it to design. So what we would do in that case, so we've built out the tools here. We would add knowledge to this MCP agent, and we would add a static document or a SharePoint library of all our templates. And then in the instructions, we would say any document that you generate will always utilize our templates that are available. If a user says use, I don't know, corporate A template, it will utilize corporate A template and build that out for you. Okay. Unfortunately, right now, there's only in Word. There is no PowerPoint and there is no Excel support at the moment. Okay. Pretty cool? I thought so, yeah. Yeah, question.
So, yeah, because I've encountered this problem, generated file, you've got chat versus the agent, and with the chat will generate the files for you. Can you call the chat with MCP rather than actually do an agent?
So chat itself is connected in a little bit of a different way. So yes, we could. There's a thing called Graph, Microsoft Graph. Yeah. It does get a little bit, just a little bit iffy with regards to connecting MCPs to that chat window, but we can certainly extend a first-party Copilot. So if you've got the full Microsoft 365 Copilot, then basically we build this MCP out, and then we use a little custom connector just to connect to what is known as a URI, and basically it'll flow through. So with the chat one, I find it a little bit of a hit and miss, but within chat, you can actually chat to an agent. Have you seen that? So basically, when we publish this, within chat, you would basically come in and you would say, cool, I'm going to chat with a specific agent now, and then talk to whatever that agent is within your organization. So that's how you'd link it to that MCP server. But the problem that we have is you have to select the agent here. If you just go and type it in over here, it's going to try and use Microsoft's default route for that. So you'd have to go and select that agent, and then it will go through. Okay. So that is the connectors versus the MCP side. You can see there's a lot of MCPs that are available. There's going to be more and more coming as a SaaS product. So if you are wanting that ease of connections and ease of deployments, that is certainly going to be your friend. But you guys might be looking at building a custom one, all right? And a custom one it might sound daunting, but there is likes of this website over here called mcpservers.org. And there's so many open source, great MCP servers that you can utilize within your organization. Go and utilize that code, bring it into your organization, and see if it's going to be a good fit for your organization. So this is only one of many, many, many good repos that you can go and have a look at with regards to MCP servers. So I encourage you to have a look and see if someone's already built something rather than just trying to build it out from scratch, because it does really help you fast track that build. But if you wanted to build something out of scratch, now this one over here is a very simple one. Oh, I've got a lot of errors there. That's not good. Give me a sec. So this one's basically running off Python, and all it really does is generate a PowerPoint presentation for me. So this one here, because we don't have an MCP server built in through the SaaS product, I thought, well, why don't we just try and build one that can build a presentation on my behalf. So what we'll do is we'll jump back into the agents. Now this one I've already built out because I didn't feel like you guys wanted to watch me connect all of this up. But I'll show you exactly how I did it. So you can see over here, I've got create private MCP. What we do to add that one is we go to add tool, and then under model context protocol, we've got a couple of things that we need to fill in. Server name, a description, where we're going to find that, or where we're hosting that MCP server. So the nice thing about MCP servers is they'll support anything from HTTP, HTTPS, so we can actually connect to it outside our environment or via the internet or via the LAN. Or we can use things like what's called STDIO, which is basically a direct connection to these via our LANs and WANs, etc. So we've got multiple ways of connecting to it. Here, we're just going to add a streamable point, and then you can choose between using an API key, and we can also integrate it into our OAuth or our Entra IDPs from an authentication perspective. I highly recommend not doing none, but it is available for you if you really wanted to. And then what happens is we can basically say, all right, cool, well, let's see if this is working first. Let's list the templates that are available. Can't spell. That's not great either. And what it'll do is it'll go through and actually read this over here. So you can see it's actually doing some requests to the MCP server, and basically come back and list the PowerPoint presentations that are available to me to be able to generate that document. So give it a second. Hopefully it works. There we go. So it's reading all of the templates that are available, and then it's going to push it out what templates I have available to me. And then what I'll do is I'll say create a 3-slide document on MCP options for executives, and use the, let's go with training template. So what's going to happen now is it's going to go through and it's going to actually go into this VM that I'm hosting that MCP server with. It's going to go and process all that it can do, and eventually it'll open up PowerPoint and it will start building out this template based on the what I've asked it to do. Now, that prompt is not a great prompt, so I'm not expecting this to do anything radical. But the more richness prompts we have, the more templates that are rich, the more of our logos we have. Perhaps we can set the instructions around how you want to write, etc. But basically, it'll then go and build out this PowerPoint presentation for me. And then what we can do is we can do a simple automation task to push that into a Teams channel, push it to the person that asked you to create it. Then that person's got that template available, or that presentation available. So users that don't have those first-party agents, like a Microsoft 365 Copilot, that can create the PowerPoints in their PowerPoint. You might want to do something like this, where you can do it for the entire organization, host your own MCP server, and then have a standardized way of people creating these different presentations for you. So you can see it's finished now because I did 3 slides, basically MCP for executives. What is MCP and what are the key benefits of it? We can also ask it to go and grab the images from a specific repo that we have. Maybe we've got SharePoint, got a whole bunch of logos. Maybe we've got a marketing team that wants specific fonts. We can all obviously create that as well and add that to it. So we can do it in a standardized and conformed manner. Any questions on thank you, it worked. Everything worked. Everything seemed to seemed to go down. Many times you try and do demos and things just fall apart. But that wasn't terrible, and I hope it was interesting to you guys as well. So if there are there any questions before I just wrap up quickly before handing over to Liam? Question?
So that's tied to your personal account, and then obviously we have one answer right here at Dabble. Is there a Microsoft account that we can discuss about how to want to start moving some of these functionalities out of the individual account management service account, how we open types of it wide as opposed to just limiting to the right user?
So to try and understand the question, are you saying that you've built some sort of functions in a personal capacity?
Functions was created for you, so it's typed for cat to use specific, which then means there's a lot of issues then attempting to share. We don't know how you can use it. If I've got an index, I can't have 300 deep with something that you can do with comparted licenses. So I've got to understand how permissions work in the back end, so that we can allow various functionalities on wider company.
Oh, absolutely. So everything I've done here is not on a personal basis. It's basically been done as, yes, my account, but if Alex went and created using the same MCP server, same agent, it would be created on her account, and then the sharing permissions that you'd have. So let's say, for example, this PowerPoint presentation we just created now, I'll be able to share that with anyone within my organization. I'll be able to attach it to email as well, but it's all done on a per user, whoever signs in to that agent.
Right. But if you then go and say, put that chat, the white box inside an intranet, and anybody in the company can use it, suddenly they can't, because then they don't have the permission, they don't have the specific license. There's type and per license.
So that is a first party, and you're right, that's first party agents, whereas this is Copilot Studio. This is not licensed on an individual basis whatsoever. So this is all licensed on a full tenant level. So you buy one license and every single user can utilize that agent. My pleasure. No worries at all. Question?
We are a MCP provider. What is the easiest way for most of our customers? They don't have an admin team to set up this kind of the Copilot with the MCP together. What is the most easy way? Can we actually do something and publish them to easily say they are just no normal user that has to go to this link, then you've got it for accessing for data to MCP. You just need to both app. Is there a path for that?
Not in the Microsoft ecosystem, no. The only way at the moment is through the Gits. So GitHub and that type of stuff, and the users go and pull down, like I showed you, those other ones. Microsoft doesn't really have like a marketplace itself for you guys to do that, custom MCPs yet. It's a great idea though. I would actually quite like for that to come, because we've got it in Azure. It would be nice to start seeing it in but at the moment, nothing like that at all. We've just got the repos that we can utilize, and then try and market it, I suppose, at the moment. So, yeah.
That's the biggest challenge we find.
Absolutely.
Don't really have that.
Don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like all of those ones that are listed as MCP are all the massive players that have millions and millions of dollars to feed to Microsoft. So yeah, no, I do understand. It's a great idea. I think that marketplace would be awesome, that we can see some more third party. Because often, just like I said with this one over here, often these are so good that you just utilize those because they're brilliant. So yeah, unfortunately not at the moment. So lastly, let me just see if that's coming up. Last couple of slides from my side before I hand over to Liam. One takeaway here, if you're using MCPs as a SaaS, you really don't have a lot to worry about. Just control the tools that are available to it. Don't give it everything just for the sake of giving it everything. Really try and understand what you want this thing to do, what you want it to be able to do, because once people start using these agents, like I've just shown you now, we're not going to be opening up the outlooks. We're not going to be able to, we're going to be reviewing these within text to voice. We're going to be talking to these agents to be able to do things on our behalf. So we really want to make sure that someone can't slip up and, I don't know, send our competitor our price list or something like that. So really try and refine what you want us to achieve. Again, it's not a replacement either. So please don't walk out here and say, oh, I'm going to rip out all my connectors. That is a rubbish way to do it. MCP is awesome. Often we even take a hybrid approach to it where we have a couple of really maybe pivotal or very confidential systems, and we want to make sure that there's no semantic over that, there's no indexing, and you're only able to fetch a small piece of information from that confidential system. Connectors are the way to go. Use those connectors and make sure that we're strict with that. So a hybrid approach is often something that we can also utilize, MCP as well as connectors. So just some example use cases. That multi-system orchestration with MCP makes life a lot easier. We can plug in multiple systems and we have one MCP that's basically doing it. Or we can have multiple little MCPs running at the same time as well. And it's a good idea to try and break it out sometimes, because if we have one and it goes down, that entire agent cannot do a thing. Whereas if we have multiple that are doing it perhaps, I don't know, per service or whatever it may be, if one goes down, at least the agent can continue doing the others, but it might not be able to access the ERP, for example. So depending on your architecture, you might want to have 2 or 3 MCPs doing different things. But yeah, there's just something that we can. We can also expose the legacy systems. So all these legacy systems that do not have APIs are stuck. We basically MCP those on-prem, get into those and pull that through. And like I said, we can do the hybrid approach as well. Ownership and structure. So if you're doing custom, this is important to you. Someone's got to own it. Someone's got to audit it. Someone's got to check, like you said, the security logs for prompt injection. There's a whole bunch of things. When we build out an MCP, not so much with a SaaS product, because that is controlled or given as a product, and you put the trust in someone else, which is probably even more scary. But basically, if you're building a custom one, you've got to make sure that you lock these things down and monitor these things, because they have access to all of your systems you plug into it. So it's highly, highly important that you've got visibility, you've got auditing, and you've got actions to be able to respond to any threats that do happen, just like anything that's on the internet. Key takeaways for me, just before I hand over to Liam. Connectors, they are governed, predefined, strict with what they do. MCP, that dynamicness, that, like I said, take another road to the same destination. You don't have to take the same road type of thing. Critical again for the MCP, the security aspect. So yeah, with that, I just wanted to say, I hope that gave you a little bit more around what MCP can do for you, how you can utilize within your organization, what connectors can do for you, and how you can utilize that. But we'll be hanging around afterwards. If you do have any questions, or if you have got some experience with it and you would like to share it with me, I'd love to hear it. But with that, I'll hand over to Liam, and thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
Awesome, thanks, Craig. Hi, guys. Yeah, I'm Liam. I look after the Modern Workplace portfolio at Ingram, so more of in the licensing, not so technical space, but enough to be dangerous. So today, I'm going to sort of spend 10 to 15 minutes just kind of going through some of the stuff that I think everybody should know with what's, I guess, been released by Microsoft over the last sort of 3, maybe even 6 months, but realistically these updates from Microsoft always come pretty thick and fast. So I just want to go through some of the key components that have been released and that you probably should know. And if you may already be aware of some of these. If you don't, please be aware, because this sort of stuff is really important when it comes to licensing perspective. And just better ways to do stuff also with your licensing. So some of this can be cost related and some of this is function. So I just kind of want to go through some pieces today. I'm going to start off with some of the enterprise agreement changes over the last sort of 6 months we've seen. Some of the new Copilot for Business bundles. Some of you might have heard of that SKU. There's obviously a lot of chat around Copilot at the moment and first-party Copilots. They've released an SMB version. Some of the grace period changes that some of you may have taken advantage of. CSP promos, ways to save a bit of money with some of the new SKUs and current SKUs, and new capabilities. And then I'll finish off and save the worst for last around the price increase. So cool, I'll just whip into it. I guess around the enterprise agreements, some of you may be familiar with enterprise agreements, some of you may have never heard of them before, but I'm sure it'll be applicable to a couple of you in the room. So with, I guess, enterprise agreements, we've had many ways over the years to purchase Microsoft products and licensing. So everything from enterprise agreements, you've got open value up there, some might even remember MPSA, CSP legacy, obviously, where we had the nice flexible structure, to obviously what we see today, NCE, and then obviously Web Direct and other ways with your credit card attached. So there's a lot of ways, as I sort of say, to skin the licensing cat in this way. But I guess Microsoft are trying to simplify it in many ways. And that's what we see today. So you'll see CSP today, it's quite simply, you'll see that as what we call NCE, New Commerce Experience, which is what you'd buy through your CSP partners and resellers. You've still got your Web Direct purchasing, and you can do that just with a credit card, paying RRP price, obviously, from Microsoft and managing it yourself, or maybe your MSP does that. And then lastly, we've seen a big transition from enterprise agreements now to what we call MCA-E. So MCA is the Microsoft Customer Agreement. It's actually taking a component of CSP and putting that into enterprise agreements. But I think more importantly is, what do those sort of changes mean in regards to EA into MCA-E? So quite simply, so sort of from Jan 1st last year, they introduced MCA-E, and they basically discontinued enterprise agreements. Obviously, you can still, whatever the rest of your term on the enterprise agreements left, whether that's the 3 or 5 year term, you can see that out. But they've really shifted their model to really large enterprise customers. And what do I mean by large? Because that term is very much ambiguous. What we're sort of seeing from Microsoft is anything under 500 seats sort of needs to pretty much be pushed over to CSP and be purchasing through resellers or Web Direct. And the other side to that is the discount strategy. So a lot of you in that sort of under, say, even 1,000 seats, you're not going to see a large volume discount on that, if at all. And so they've basically gotten rid of volume discounts for under those size customers. It very much is, I guess, a play at the large enterprise market, especially in the US, which is obviously where they focus a lot, but it affects us in New Zealand, I think, quite differently, being a very different economy and market size. So what it's kind of left us with is a lot of customers being pushed and moved off enterprise agreement and figuring out, where do we go, how do we manage this, what's the idea? So I guess some of the trends in EA we're sort of seeing is that real shift in licensing strategy, moving to Microsoft, what they call CSP and NCE, and I guess trying to really rise that model, which has been super successful over the years, still maintain the option for enterprise agreements, or MCA-E now, but really trying to reserve that large discount for sort of 2,000 even plus to really get a big discount, which kind of prices out a big portion of the New Zealand market, of course. So I think what we're sort of seeing is customers moving to obviously CSP, but also making sure, I think what you probably maybe haven't felt before with some of the enterprise agreements is that I guess structure and support around that, which is kind of what we're here to do, to say provide today, or follow-up sessions we do, is trying to give that guidance and advice when you do have to move to CSP, or if you want to look at that. And I think from a right size perspective, that's what we're sort of seeing in the New Zealand market and the big shift. So anyone that's sort of been in that area, I highly recommend looking at CSP, or if you've been pushed off it, make sure you partner with somebody that can give you that right advice, because there's a huge amount of opportunity in that area, and you sort of don't have to feel like you're just left in a lurch around that, because there were some pretty big changes obviously around that. So moving on from that, I just wanted to go through some of the Copilot for Business SMB bundles. I don't know if anyone's heard of some of these new products that have come out since, I think December was the first release of some of these. So in December, they sort of started releasing Defender Suite and Purview bundles. So those of you that are familiar with those, it includes a lot of Defender, but also compliance and governance under the Purview side, but for SMB customers. Traditionally, we couldn't add those to, for example, Business Premium, Business Standard, any users on those sort of licenses, and it was sort of only reserved for those enterprise E3, E5 licenses that we traditionally saw. On the other side of that, as of December also, they released a Copilot for Business SKU, which is essentially what we saw as M365 Copilot, which was their first release, first-party Copilots, as Craig mentioned, so embedded apps, but actually being able to attach that to all of your SMB plans at an SMB price, I think, is the more important part. So at the moment, you'll see bundles for Copilot for Business and Basic, Standard, Premium. You can buy it standalone as well. These are just monthly paid annual commit pricing up there. But what we've sort of seen is like a $15 to $20 per month per user price reduction versus the enterprise version of this. At this stage, functionality is the exact same across the two products. I'm going to be honest, I do think that will change probably over the next 12 months or so. But anybody using those first-party Copilots, and if you're using these SMB SKUs like Standard, Premium, Basic, I highly recommend moving over to Copilot for Business. It's a better way to license, it's a lot more cost effective, and if you even try buy an M365 license with these base licenses, you'll actually be blocked now as well. So I think that's a really, really good call out from Microsoft and for our region more importantly. So alongside all of that, I haven't added them up there, but like the Defender and Purview bundles as well, is a much better way that we can license ourselves without having to go full E3, E5 to get those same security and compliance features that you might have wanted or been looking at. Cool, so looking at grace period, I don't know how many people have actually used grace period before or even know it exists. A lot of people don't know it even exists. So at the moment, if you turn off a subscription, turn auto renew off, and you let it lapse, you've actually got 30 days of service post lapse. Most won't risk it, which is totally fair. You want to be making sure you're licensed at all times, but some will actually use the grace period, and you are entitled to do so. What we're going to see from May 4th, it was actually going to be April 1st, but they've pushed it out by another month just to get themselves ready, I think, is remove that 30-day grace period entirely. You then have 3 options for a subscription when it comes up for renewal. And the first is either to renew it, like you are currently. If you've got auto-renew turned on, cool, it rolls over, it renews. You move into that 7-day period. You can choose to cancel still, that's fine. You've still got that 7-day window to reduce as well if you like. Second option is to cancel upon renewal. So basically you turn auto-renew off and you can choose that, okay, cool, I want that to cancel immediately when it renews. That will obviously mean loss of service right away. There'll be no service, those users will lose service. Third option is to move into a new product, or I guess term they call EST, Extended Service Term. It basically means that you will be paying for your grace period, as we've had today, on a per day calculated basis. I believe the price is 5% higher than the monthly priced option of whatever product you've got. So just be aware of that. Again, Microsoft calculate it daily, I believe, from 1 p.m. New Zealand time, which I believe is midnight US time. So that's how they calculate it. But just anybody using grace period from May onwards, just be acutely aware that that'll be going away and you will have loss of service. Cool, on to, I guess, something a bit more positive. Promotions that Microsoft run. They obviously run a lot of these every quarter, every half, very common. Mostly geared around their sort of what we call premium products, but also new products to market. So some of the ones that I just sort of talked about before, around Copilot for Business and Business Premium, there's some really good offers on the right there. 35% off Standard and Copilot, 25% Business Premium and Copilot. There are minimum 10-seat quantities for those, so just be aware of that. You can get the standalone 15% off, no minimum order quantity. That's a pretty cool one for people to take advantage of, so highly recommend taking advantage of that. Even if you just lock one license in, you can get that price locked in for 12 months, increase licenses as they come up, so really, really cool. There's some E3, E5 promos as well for anybody that's in that enterprise licensing space. Just be aware, most of the enterprise licenses have a prerequisite of you can't have that in your tenant previously, which is a massive stipulation for a lot of us. So just be aware of that. There's ways that we can check eligibility. So if you reach out to Alex, I can always check that for you. And the last one is if you are looking at doing a large deployment across, almost your whole organization, there is a 20% off option that we can look at for 100 seats or more. It is sort of a request type basis. There are some customers that have been pre-approved by Microsoft, but the ones we have requested for, they've actually been really successful and we've been able to get that across the line. So there is a bit of flexibility there, but more importantly, if there's anything you're looking at adopting around these licenses, take advantage of some of these promos, because as the next slide shows, we've got more increases coming. So saving the worst for last as usual. We've got a pretty significant increase across some of the more enterprise licenses. Some of them are sort of around that 10 to 12% mark. The good news is for those of you on Business Premium, we are unaffected, which is nice for once, because usually that's one they've pretty much increased every year. But as you can see, there are increases pretty much across all the base licensing stack, everything from Business Basic to the frontline SKUs, E3, E5. So just be aware of that. This is all USD pricing, so I do apologize. Microsoft don't give us local pricing or any country outside the US until the month before. So we're sort of left up to our own devices just to work out those percentages from there. So we can give indicative pricing, but obviously we don't know exactly what that'll be. One key part to note about your increase, though, is that is only at your renewal date. So it's not from July 1st onwards. It is from renewal after July. So if you renew in December, you're not affected until, obviously, your renewal in December. So just be aware of that. Cool. I think I've pretty much covered all my little updates I wanted to give. I think we've got some food and drinks around there. If there's any questions. Oh, yes, sorry. Yep. Of course, absolutely.
We're dealing with a CSP, and in last year we find out you cannot deploy a certain Azure asset by CSP subscriptions, and our CSP told us Microsoft just don't allow it. And the tricky part is we come with a Microsoft supporting ticket without our CSP approved, so we are stuck in there. Luckily, that's just an R&D project, but it's a production project. Is there any people we can contact to build up more understanding? The resource I'm more specific talking about is actually not Microsoft Photo, like a Cloud 4.5. So if you know about it.
So I'll answer that, yeah. So I've got two cases that I've lodged with Microsoft, and you're welcome to reach out to Alex. You should have get feedback on it.
Yeah.
But Opus 4.5, 4.6 is not available on CSP, but it's available on EA as well as Mexico. So I have raised it at Microsoft New Zealand. They are looking into it, and as soon as I get feedback, I'm more than happy to share.
Thank you. Yeah.
But yes, I'm aware of it.
And those customers, we decide to go down production work, we're a huge problem for the ISO compliance side of things. Yeah.
It's not the first time we've seen like certain, workloads you can do under enterprise or something like that agreement, but not under CSP. So yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. No, we've encountered it a couple of times as well, so it's not the first, but yeah. I'll leave that with Craig. Yes.
With E5 licensing, obviously last year they removed Teams, and we're still on the old version.
Oh yes, yep.
That's
sure.
not changing there, is it? We're going to keep Teams included.
Yeah, all included again. Yeah, sorry. Yep, good question. Anybody that hasn't seen that update as well, last year, Teams is all available, included again. They reached an agreement with the EU and screwed everybody around for a year, and then back to square one as per usual, which was exactly what we anticipated.
And is there any change? Do you know the Intune suite?
Intune
suite supposedly being added to E5.
Yes, so there are some features. I actually had a slide in here that I took out, and the reason I did is because Microsoft had extremely, they cocked it up actually, but yes, you're absolutely, I got nothing more I can say to that. But yes, I believe, what is it, Craig? Cloud PKI, a few other... Yeah, no, but for E5, I believe it's Cloud PKI, I believe, Suite, there's a few other...
Yeah, but it's all included.
Yeah, no, that's all included now. Yeah, that's what I'm meaning. Yeah. Come chat with me after, and I'll show you the slide so you can see it. It was just that the Business Basic Standard Premium was absolutely wrong, and so that's why I excluded it, but the E5 and E3 bit of what they were adding was correct. So yeah, we can have a look after, I'll show you, yeah. But yeah, that is there, yeah. Any other questions? Anything else? Yes?
What we've been restricted volumes for these stubs for those customers.
For enterprise agreements? From what I've heard, because we don't obviously sell enterprise agreements, I don't have anything in writing, but everything we've seen and heard from other customers is about 1,000 plus. Yeah, 1,000 users plus basically. Cool. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll pass back over to Alex to wrap up. Thank you so much, guys.